Thanksgiving was always a weird holiday for me. I'm Ryan, 27, and for most of my life, I kind of felt like the background character in my own family. Not hated, just tolerated. My sister Jenna was the golden child, my mom's mini-me, perfect grades, perfect fiancé, the whole deal. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the artist, the one who, according to my Uncle Steve, never really grew up. He said that a lot. Uncle Steve is one of those guys who acts like a sitcom dad, but without the charm. Loud, opinionated, loves grilling and controlling the people around him. Every year, he hosts Thanksgiving, and every year, I drag myself there because, well, tradition, right? This year felt different. I hadn't heard anything about the dinner. No invite, no family group text, not even a vague, guilt-tripping reminder from my mom. At first, I figured maybe they assumed I'd just show up like I always do. But then I saw photos on Jenna's Instagram. The long table already set, the turkey carved, everyone dressed up, laughing. It was clearly planned. I stared at that picture for a long time, wondering if it was a mistake. Maybe the invite got lost. Maybe they'd just forgotten to hit send. I gave myself every excuse to believe it wasn't what it looked like. But part of me knew. Still, I got in my car and drove to Uncle Steve's place. It was only 20 minutes away, and I told myself if I was wrong, if somehow it was all just a misunderstanding, I'd laugh it off and sit down like nothing happened. But the second I pulled into the driveway, the cold air outside felt warmer than what was waiting for me. Uncle Steve met me at the edge of the driveway. He didn't even wait for me to get out of the car. He just walked up, arms crossed over his beer belly, that smug little grin he always wore when he thought he had the upper hand. "You weren't invited, Ryan," he said, casual like we were discussing the weather. "Go home." I didn't say anything at first. I just looked past him toward the house. Through the wide window, I could see everyone. My mom at the head of the table, laughing. Jenna next to her, scrolling through her phone. Even my best friend, Kyle, someone I grew up with and who usually spent the holidays bouncing between my place and his dad's, was there, raising a glass like he belonged. None of them looked toward the window. None of them noticed I was standing there, just yards away from a celebration I was clearly cut out of. I nodded once. Didn't argue, didn't beg for an explanation. I just turned, got back in my car, and drove a little ways down the road to the nearest gas station parking lot. I parked, leaned my forehead against the steering wheel, and let the silence swallow me. Then I made one call. Not a dramatic one, not some secret agent or lawyer or anything like that. Just a friend. One of those real ones. The kind of friend who knows how messy your family is and never tries to talk you out of being hurt by it. We'd worked on a few side gigs together, mostly graphic design and back-end stuff. But more importantly, she was the manager for a pretty popular social media page, one that just happened to be running a feature that week. Holiday Nightmares. Tell us your story. I told her mine. Every word. Not angrily, not for revenge. Just truth. I told her about the lack of invite, about Uncle Steve meeting me at the driveway, about seeing my mom and sister and even Kyle laughing inside. I didn't name names, just told the story plainly. She was quiet the whole time. Then she said, "I think this fits the theme perfectly. You cool with me posting it anonymously?" I didn't even hesitate. "Yeah," I said. "Go ahead." 20 minutes later, my phone started buzzing. First it was Kyle, then Jenna, then my mom. Missed calls, texts piling in like a broken dam. The post had gone viral faster than I expected. It hit a nerve. People resonated with it. Thousands of strangers weighed in with shock and sympathy and stories of their own families turning cold. I hadn't even opened Instagram or Facebook yet, but I could already guess what was happening. Then, finally, a call from Uncle Steve. I didn't answer. Instead, I just sat in my car and watched the notifications flood in, one after the other. There was something surreal about it. This invisible shift in power. This moment where I wasn't the background character anymore. For the first time, I wasn't quietly taking the hit. I wasn't being the bigger person. I wasn't trying to understand people who clearly didn't care whether I was there or not. I was just done. The calls kept coming. My phone rang again, Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Then Jenna. Then Kyle again. I turned it on silent and sat there, just breathing. And that's when I saw a message come in, a DM request from someone I didn't know, but with a familiar last name. It was a cousin I hadn't talked to in years, one who moved away after a falling out with Uncle Steve over money. The message was short. "Good for you. Been waiting for someone to finally say it." And that was when I realized this went deeper than just me being left out of one dinner. It was never just about the invite. It was about the years of silence. The years of swallowing my feelings so I wouldn't be difficult. It was about all the family moments I'd smiled through while feeling invisible. And now, suddenly, people were paying attention, not just strangers online, but the very people who thought I'd never stand up for myself. But it wasn't even about standing up anymore. It was about walking away. And they weren't ready for that. They weren't ready for what came next. By the time I got back to my apartment, it was dark out. The leftovers I'd prepped for myself earlier that morning, just in case, were still sitting in the fridge: turkey sandwich, cranberry sauce, store-bought pie. I heated them up, sat on the couch, and ate in silence, letting my phone buzz across the counter like a distant alarm I didn't need to answer. I checked the post once, just once, on my friend's page. The comments were rolling in faster than I could read. People were sharing their own horror stories. This happened to me last year. Still haven't spoken to my family. I cried reading this. Thank you for saying it. Families like that don't deserve your silence. Good for you. It wasn't validation I was after, but I won't lie and say it didn't feel like a warm blanket. For the first time, I wasn't alone in this. Then came the group text. At 8:52 p.m., the old family group chat, which had been dead quiet for weeks, lit up. Mom, Ryan, call me. Please. Jenna, what did you do? Kyle, dude, this is getting out of hand. Uncle Steve, take that post down now. You want to air dirty laundry, fine, but you're dragging the whole family through the mud. I didn't respond. Not right away. I needed time. I needed to let the weight of all of it settle, because for once, they were the ones squirming, and I wasn't about to rush to clean up the mess they made. Around 9:30, my mom called again. No voicemail this time, just silence when I didn't answer. Then, at 9:43, she sent a text that caught me off guard. Mom, we didn't mean to hurt you. Steve said you were traveling. I thought you didn't want to come this year. That stopped me. Traveling? No one had asked. No one had checked. I'd been living 10 miles away this entire year. I hadn't even posted anything about going out of town. It was a lie. A cover-up. Probably something Steve said to excuse my absence when someone asked. I didn't know what hurt more, being excluded, or realizing they'd built a story around why I wasn't there, without even asking if I wanted to be. Then Kyle texted. Kyle, man, I didn't know. I swear I thought you were working or something. Your mom said you'd canceled. I shouldn't have believed her. I'm sorry. It was weak, but it felt semi-honest. Kyle and I had been friends since 6th grade. We'd been through a lot. Video game marathons, high school breakups, even a college road trip disaster that ended with both of us sleeping in a Walmart parking lot. But lately, he'd been drifting. More dinners with Jenna, more laughs with Uncle Steve. I'd chalked it up to growing older, but maybe it was more than that. Maybe he'd started to believe the version of me they told themselves. The unreliable one, the sensitive one, the outsider. Still, I didn't respond. I needed them to sit in it a little longer. At 10:12 p.m., the post was picked up by a bigger page, a national one. My friend messaged me in all caps. Dude, 40K shares in an hour. It's everywhere. And she was right. When I checked Twitter, there were screenshots. Threads. People were dissecting the dynamic, the manipulation, the entitlement. They were guessing at the family roles like it was a psychological crime scene. Some even tried to figure out who I was, but I stayed anonymous, watching from behind the glass like someone observing a fire they didn't have to put out. That's when the emails started coming in. An HR rep from a tech company I once freelanced for. A former teacher. An old roommate. People who recognized the tone, if not the details. One line from a woman I hadn't spoken to in years stuck out. I always wondered how you stayed so quiet at those parties. Now I understand. You were drowning. At 11 o'clock, Jenna called. I didn't answer. She tried again. Then again, and finally sent a wall of text so long I had to scroll twice to finish it. She said I was overreacting, that I could have just texted her, that I'd blown everything up over one dinner, that I was embarrassing the family, that Uncle Steve's clients were calling him, asking questions, that their neighbors were asking what happened. I read the message twice, then once more, and when I got to the end, I laughed, quietly, bitterly, because in all those words, not once did she ask how I felt. Not once did she apologize. It wasn't about me being hurt. It was about them being uncomfortable. The thing about silence is that it builds up like pressure in a pipe. You don't even realize how close it is to bursting until the whole thing floods. That post, that one story, was my floodgate opening. And now, every person who ever brushed me off, who ever told me to be the bigger person, was watching me become someone they couldn't ignore. And I hadn't even said their names. That was the part that scared them most. The power of being anonymous and being right. At 11:47, my phone buzzed again. It was a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me tap accept. A woman's voice came through, nervous, almost trembling. "Hi, is this Ryan? Who's this?" "My name's Emily. I'm Steve's daughter." I froze. Emily, his daughter from his first marriage, the one he barely talked about, the one he hadn't invited to Thanksgiving in years. "I saw the post," she said, "and I think we need to talk." And that's where things shifted, where the story stopped being just mine, where the past started to unravel faster than I ever expected. I sat there, stunned. I hadn't heard Emily's name in at least a decade. Uncle Steve never talked about her unless someone else brought her up, and even then, it was with this awkward mix of disdain and forced indifference. "She made her choices," he once said when I asked why she wasn't at Christmas. That was the whole explanation. No follow-up, no curiosity, just cold dismissal. But here she was, on the phone with me. "I didn't know if I should call," Emily continued, her voice low. "But when I saw the post, I knew it was you, the way you wrote it. I don't know, I just knew." I didn't know what to say. There was something haunting about hearing from her, like a ghost of family past suddenly stepping into the present. She hadn't just disappeared, she'd been erased. And yet, her voice sounded warm. Familiar, even. "I'm guessing you saw how fast it spread," I said finally, just to say something. She gave a short, sad laugh. "Yeah, I saw. It's blowing up. And I've been reading the comments all night. The whole thing just hit me. Hard." There was a pause. Not awkward, just heavy. "You know what really messed me up?" she said. "I thought I was the only one. That cracked something in me. I admitted. And just like that, the wall I'd built up all day, anger, detachment, all of it, started to shift. Because for so long, I'd thought maybe it was me. That maybe I was too sensitive, too distant, too unwilling to let things go. That maybe I really didn't belong. But now here was someone else, cut from the same family tree, telling me she'd felt the same way. "Do you have time to talk?" she asked. "I don't want to dump all this on you, but there's stuff I've never said out loud before." I looked at the clock, midnight. I was supposed to be asleep. I had work in the morning. But none of that mattered. "Yeah," I said. "I've got time." So we talked. For hours. She told me about how Steve used to pit her against her mom. How he'd throw money at problems and then yank it away just to remind her who held the leash. How he'd tell everyone she was difficult, ungrateful, spoiled, when in reality, she'd just started asking questions he didn't want to answer. She talked about how when she turned 21, he cut her off completely and told the rest of the family she'd moved on. She hadn't. She just stopped fighting to be seen. And then she said something I'll never forget. "He taught me to believe that being silent was the price of keeping the peace. But it never bought me peace. It just made him comfortable." I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt on my upper lip. It was like everything I'd never said had found a voice in her. And it wasn't just about Steve. It was my mom brushing things under the rug. Jenna laughing along with the jokes. Kyle, my so-called best friend, joining them at that table like it was just another Thursday. It was years of being the outsider and pretending that was okay. Emily and I talked until nearly 3 a.m. And by the end of it, I felt lighter. Not healed. Far from it, but understood. Like someone had opened a locked door inside my chest and let fresh air in. Before we hung up, she said, "If you ever want help telling more of the truth, I'm in. Seriously, you're not alone in this." And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't going to end with one post. This was the beginning. I finally got a few hours of sleep, and when I woke up, everything had escalated. My inbox had exploded. Requests from journalists. Offers from podcasts. Someone from a documentary series asking if I'd speak on camera, anonymously, if I wanted. My name hadn't been leaked, but people were starting to put pieces together. Extended family members, old friends, acquaintances. Some reached out just to say, "I think I know who that was, and I believe you." Others weren't so kind. I got a text from Aunt Carol, Steve's wife, around noon. "Aunt Carol, you're ruining lives over one dinner, Ryan. Was that your plan?" To humiliate everyone publicly? You were always dramatic. I stared at the message for a while. The gall of it. The projection. That's when I realized the real reason they were panicking. They weren't worried about the post being mean or inappropriate. They were worried it resonated. That people believed it. That strangers, thousands of them, recognized the kind of manipulation and cruelty they'd spent years disguising as family tradition. And in their world, image was everything. So I started pulling receipts. I wasn't planning to go public yet, but I began gathering screenshots, texts, voicemails, things I'd let slide, things I'd ignored to keep the peace. The time Jenna forwarded a family vacation invite to everyone but me. The message from Mom telling me not to make a scene at Christmas because Steve wasn't in the mood for attitude. The audio clip of Uncle Steve telling me at my college graduation dinner that graphic design isn't a real job. Piece by piece, I was building a timeline, a record, because this time, I wasn't going to let them twist the story. And that's when something happened that I didn't expect. A knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. My apartment building had a buzzer, and I hadn't heard it go off. But there it was, 3 sharp knocks, right around 3:15 p.m. I froze. 1,000 possibilities flashed through my head. Another neighbor? A reporter? My landlord? Or one of them? I walked to the door slowly, heart pounding, and looked through the peephole. What I saw made my stomach drop. It was my mother, and she wasn't alone. Standing beside her, arms crossed, was Uncle Steve. I didn't open the door right away. I just stood there, watching through the peephole as my mother fidgeted with the strap of her purse and Uncle Steve paced like a lion in a cage, all bottled up fury and fake restraint. The audacity of them showing up unannounced, after everything, after deciding I didn't exist on Thanksgiving, made my fingers curl into fists at my sides. But I wasn't going to give them the upper hand, not again. I unlocked the door and opened it just a crack, keeping the chain latched. What do you want? Mom's eyes widened like she hadn't expected me to sound so cold. Ryan, sweetheart, can we come in? We just want to talk. Behind her, Steve snorted. We wouldn't have to talk if you hadn't made that ridiculous post. You could have just picked up the phone. My voice stayed steady. You could have invited me. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. You know what? No, you're not coming in. Say whatever you need to say right here. Mom looked wounded. Ryan, please. Don't do this. This isn't you. I raised my eyebrows. Isn't me? You mean it's not the version of me you're used to? The one who smiles through everything and pretends it's all fine? Yeah, I'm done being that guy. Steve stepped forward, but I shut the door a bit tighter, so he couldn't even see my face clearly. We've been getting calls, Ryan, he said, his voice sharp. People are asking questions. My business partner saw the post. Carol's crying in the guest room. You've made us into a public spectacle. No, I said quietly. You did that. I just told the truth. Mom's voice cracked. Do you really think we did this to hurt you? You've always been so sensitive. We thought you didn't want to come this year. Steve said you'd mentioned something about being busy. I never said that. I cut in. None of you even asked. You assumed. Or worse, you lied. Because it was easier to pretend I didn't matter than to deal with the discomfort of inviting someone you all treat like a burden. They were both silent for a beat. Then Steve let out a sharp laugh. You're acting like some kind of martyr, he sneered. You're not the only person with problems, Ryan. Grow up. And that was it. That was the sentence that broke the last fragile thread of empathy I had left. I slammed the door shut, not hard, but with finality, and locked the deadbolt. I stood there for a moment, listening to them mutter on the other side. I heard Mom say something like, he's not thinking straight, and Steve curse under his breath before their footsteps faded. I didn't move. I just leaned against the door and breathed. Not long after, my phone buzzed again. Jenna this time. Jenna, what are you doing? Why is Mom sobbing? You need to fix this, Ryan. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because by then, the full ripple effect had already started. My post had crossed over from social media to news aggregators. A few journalists had picked it up and written anonymous op-eds about holiday exclusion and family dynamics. One even compared it to the concept of emotional scapegoating, how families often use one member as a dumping ground for their dysfunction, then act shocked when that person finally walks away. People were talking, and not just strangers. Over the next few days, I got more messages from extended family, cousins, great-aunts, even people I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Some just wrote short notes. I'm proud of you. Others sent paragraphs, telling me about their own versions of Thanksgiving betrayal. I even got a message from my dad's sister, who hadn't spoken to my mom in years. She wrote, "I always thought you were different. I see now you were just surviving." That word, surviving, stuck with me, because that's what I'd been doing for years. Not living, not thriving. Just surviving in a family that only saw me as useful when I was quiet, helpful, non-confrontational. But now that I'd spoken up, really spoken up, they didn't know what to do with me. A week passed. I blocked Steve. I muted Jenna. I ignored Kyle's repeated texts, all variations of "can we talk?" and "I didn't know, man." Because at that point, I didn't care whether they knew or didn't. It was too little, too late. But I didn't isolate myself. Emily and I stayed in touch. We met up for coffee a few days later, and it was surreal how quickly we clicked. We talked for 3 hours straight. She told me more about the family I'd never seen, about the subtle ways people like Steve twist the narrative, how they pit people against each other so no one compares notes. She even showed me old emails from Steve to her mom, full of threats and ultimatums. One line stood out to me more than any other. "Ryan's heading down the same path. Soft. Weak. He won't make it unless someone straightens him out." I stared at those words for a long time, because that wasn't just cruel. That was premeditated. He'd been preparing the rest of the family to believe the worst about me long before I'd even realized it. Gaslighting on a family-wide level, undermining me in subtle ways so that by the time I ever pushed back, it would seem like I was the one overreacting. It wasn't paranoia. It was a pattern. And now that I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name on the envelope. It was from Mom. I opened it slowly, expecting some manipulative guilt trip. But what I found was different. It was short, barely 2 paragraphs. But the tone was quieter. Not apologetic exactly, but reflective. She wrote, "I read everything. I read the comments. I read what people said about mothers like me. At first, I was furious. But then I remembered your face when you were a boy. How you used to shrink when people raised their voices. How you learned to disappear into corners. I didn't protect you. I let others define you. And I stood by while it happened. I didn't think I was doing harm. But silence is a kind of harm, too. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know, I see it now. I'm sorry." I stared at that letter for a long time. It wasn't enough. Not yet. Not by itself. But it was something. And for the first time in years, it felt like someone in my family had actually seen me. Christmas came and went. I didn't go home. I spent it with Emily and a few friends who'd also chosen to step away from their families that year. We ate takeout, played board games, and watched cheesy movies on Netflix. No drama. No guilt. Just laughter and real connection. The kind I used to think only happened in movies. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't vindictive. It was just peaceful. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I didn't need their approval. I had truth on my side, and people who finally believed me. So when New Year's rolled around, I wrote something of my own. A follow-up post. No names, no accusations, just a reflection. I wrote about boundaries, about how families can love you and still hurt you, about how walking away doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're choosing yourself. The post didn't go viral like the first one, but that wasn't the point. It reached the people it needed to reach. It reached me. And I think, in a small way, it reached my mother too. Uncle Steve never contacted me again. Jenna eventually sent a real apology, a short one, but sincere. We're not close, but we're cordial now. Kyle and I talked once, and I told him I wished him well, but I didn't want to rebuild something I couldn't trust. And that was okay, because I had new traditions now. On Thanksgiving the next year, I hosted dinner. Small, quiet, full of laughter. Emily came. A few friends came. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody made jokes at someone else's expense. And when someone spilled cranberry sauce on the couch, we laughed and kept eating. No one was left outside the door. No one was told to go home. And as I looked around the room, I realized that's what family is supposed to feel like.
Thank you for watching the entire video. If you like it, please subscribe to the channel.